I do want to go back to that audio released just an hour before you and I talked. And this is what Prigozhin said, according to Al Jazeera. This is part of it. It apparently was about an 11-minute audio clip. We started our march because of an injustice. We went to demonstrate our protest and not to overthrow power in this country. What do you make of that latest statement?
So that fits with what we had known up until that point, because Prigozhin has never said anything directly against Putin. He was criticizing Putin's justification for having started the war in Ukraine. One of the most shocking things in terms of looking at the whole progression of Russian events was Prigozhin coming out to say that the justification for the war was false, that Ukraine was not about to attack Russia, and that it had nothing to do with NATO enlargement. So that was a direct swipe at Putin, but Prigozhin never named Putin and never said he was being disloyal to Putin. So that part fits. And what appears to have started all of this getting much, much worse recently was a statement from the Russian Defense Ministry that all of the quote unquote voluntary forces fighting in Ukraine would be put under Defense Ministry contract. Now, Prigozhin obviously already was under some form of contract to the state, but this appears to have been a swipe at Prigozhin, saying that he was going to be put under the control of Defense Minister Shoigu. And that was apparently both what prompted this incredibly vitriolic set of statements that Prigozhin has made in the last couple of weeks, but also was apparently the provocation for the attempt to march into Russian territory and say he was marching for justice.
Let's talk about the implications here. Does this infighting mean that there's going to be a civil war in Russia that we know of so far?
No, I would say it's very unlikely that this is going to lead to a future, any kind of a coup attempt, any kind of an armed rebellion against Putin, because Putin has a lot of forces at his disposal. He's got this very large, hundreds of thousands of National Guard forces that he could call in. He also has a presidential guard service. He also has the thousands of forces that are under the control of Ramzan Kadyrov in Chechnya they've stayed very pro-Putin. So I don't think anybody's going to try to overthrow him by force. But this has made Putin look quite a bit weaker because he couldn't stop it from happening, because there were at least 13 Russian airmen who were killed by Prigozhin's forces in Russia on Saturday. Because Prigozhin made these statements that he did that undercut Putin's whole justification for having the war. And so Putin has allowed himself to look weak by his slow reaction and muted reaction to Prigozhin. And I predict that this could lead to one of two things, and maybe both, that people in the inner circle who have been reluctant about the direction that Russia is going, who have seen how poorly the Ukrainian war is going for Russia, might now be bolder in their efforts to push back against Putin. And they may not any longer be accepting so much, just standing in the shadows and letting Putin have control over everything. But at the same time, Putin must recognize that he looks weaker. And what that might end up meaning is that he becomes much more vicious in a crackdown against any dissent, in an effort to show everybody that he's not weak at all, that he is coming out of this very strong and as the victor.